haven't heard a lot of teaching on what about a 20-year-old? What does parental involvement look like? Or a 35-year-old who's still, living with you, what does that look like? And I know that in our book, we kind of painted a picture of a father's involvement in his daughter's life that was much more appropriate to a 15 and 17-year-old, which is what we were when we wrote the book. And we needed a whole lot of hands-on, management and input. And so we painted a picture of, parental authority that was based on that moment in our lives and what we needed then. And it's different. It is different now. And if we wrote that book again, we would write things differently. And here are just a few principles that we need to take alongside the very important principle of honor to parents that, unfortunately, I will not have a lot of time to flesh out here, but at least we need to be aware of them. So one of them is, biblically, we can see that parental authority does change. Galatians 4:1 kind of explains this when it says, I mean that the heir, as long as he is a child, is no different from a slave, though he is the owner of everything. But he is under guardians and managers until the date set by his father. So the point here is that a child is being managed and guarded during a particular time of his life, but he's being prepared for mature adulthood. And there's going to be a kind of like a switch where he's going to go from being a child to being an adult. And I wish that we had talked more about that, and the fact that the purpose of these guardians and this training and this management by parents or guardians or whatever is to train a child into a responsible, self-governing adult that wouldn't require as much of that. It's like essentially it's working itself out of a job. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be continual parental input and counsel given, but there's a sense in which that management should be working itself out of a job by the time a girl is an adult. And instead, we've seen examples of situations where it almost seemed like people thought the very management itself was a virtue. Like it's a virtue for a 35-year-old to be continually going to her dad to ask for management. And it's a virtue for a dad to be continually giving that even when a daughter is 35. And I don't think that's true. Like what my dad would much prefer is that he has given me the principles. He has given me the foundation. He's given me the Bible. He wants to see me seeking the Lord. He wants to see me being self-governing, making good decisions on my own. And that's really what this should look like. So another principle that we do not have time to flesh out, but is very important, is that parental authority is not absolute. No earthly authority is absolute. And at one point, God had to tell the children of Israel in Ezekiel 20, do not walk in the statutes of your fathers, nor keep their rules, nor defile yourself with their idols. I am the Lord your God. Walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules. And when it comes to what does a daughter do when she believes her parents' statutes are in conflict with the Lord's, we don't have time to get into that. And a lot of the really sticky details of that really have to be fleshed out in a case-by-case basis. But I will just say that there are recourses in a situation like that don't have to look like her becoming a full-blown feminist who's throwing off all authority and throwing off everything her parents taught her and running in the opposite direction. It does not have to look like that. It must not look like that. But it also doesn't have to look like just, basically being in lockstep with your parents, even if you believe that they are commanding you to do something that is wrong and submitting to everything that they say. So, and on that, I would say that I think girls of every age really need to learn how to give honoring, respectful appeals to a parent. And Paul tells Timothy, appeal to the older men as you would a father, kind of implying that this is something that you have learned how to do with a father. You know how to do this with your dad, right? So this is what you do with other older men. And so this is something that we need to learn how to do as well. And, even in our relationship with our parents, whom we love and I feel like we're very unified with, there are times when we have to make appeals. There are times when we have to sort through things. And when there is a moment of conflict or disagreement, I also would not say that, I mean, that's not a disaster. Like, that's not a bug. It's a feature. And in order to have good relationships with people, we don't have to be absolutely in lockstep with them, seeing things exactly the same all the time. Our relationships can be deepened by talking through things, working through things. We can, our relationship with the Lord can be deepened by having to cry out to Him for wisdom on how we deal with difficult things. These can all be good things in a relationship with a parent. Another principle that we need to keep in mind is an adult woman should really have accountability and input besides her parents. By the time she gets to the point where she's an adult woman, in her church, there's a lot of other people who are actually commanded to be giving input into her life. I mean, for example, the elders, it says, obey your elders and submit to them. This is Hebrews 13:17. For they are keeping watch over your souls as those who have to give an account. So my parents are not the only people keeping watch over my soul. My elders are also doing that, and they need to know how to do that. And so I need to have a relationship with them. We also need the encouragement and exhortation of other members of the body. So many verses about that. We also need the instruction of the older women. And what all of this means is I'm not necessarily trying to lessen the importance of parental involvement, but I'm just saying that basically the accountability in our lives should be much more, not actually less. And it should spread between more people, not just a few people. And so, like, for example, for Elizabeth and me, when we write an article now, like it used to be when we would write an article or write a book or whatever, we would show it to our parents, we'd show it to our family members. Now we also show it to Pastor so-and-so and Pastor so-and-so and this theologian and this person and this person and this person, because we want more accountability, not less. And a fourth principle is spiritual vision and purpose has to come from the Lord and not from our earthly fathers. And this is tricky because there is a sense in which a father who is he is the authority over his household. He is giving rules for his household. He's setting forth some kind of vision for his household. But when it comes to the individual calling and ministry and the individual vision that the Lord gives, that Elizabeth was talking about here, that comes from the Lord. It has to come from the Lord. Our reason for getting up in the morning, our reason for doing what's right, that comes from the Lord, not from fathers. And so here's a passage that we presented in So Much More as being all about the Father's authority. And now it's kind of about that, but I also read it differently. It's Numbers 30. If a woman vows a vow to the Lord and binds herself by a pledge while within her father's house in her youth, and her father hears of her vow and her pledge by which she has bound herself and says nothing, then it shall stand. I think you're familiar with this. You're very familiar with this passage. Well, most people kind of see it as, okay, this passage is about a father's authority. But if you think about this kind of from another way, you realize there's actually something really incredible here, going on here. This passage is talking about a young girl in her father's house. She might be about 12, who is expected to be making vows by herself to the Lord. Like, she's taking the initiative to make a vow to the Lord all on her own because she wants to do this. And yes, her dad he's part of the picture, but this is her vow. He's not the one who has initiated this vow. She's doing it. And there are limits on his ability to annul it also. And so I think that that's something that we need to think about carefully when it comes to